y'all. Welcome to another episode of Rethink podcast. Sometimes it's all planned out, and I'm interviewing people, or it's like planned and scripted, and we know what the conversation is going to be. Today's not that. Today is like I'm just sitting in the woods. Um, it's I'm up at what's going to be a retreat site for future herd retreats in the future. I'm sitting on the porch of a tent that we just built this past weekend. It's awesome. I try to work off site on Mondays, so I'm up here at the cabin, studying, praying, thinking, and then writing weekend messages. And then in the afternoon, I just hang out with the dogs and with Micah. And so my thoughts are kind of around this today. And a lot of this has happened since the Rocky Mountain Men's Summit back in August. I've had several conversations with men who have had stuff come up for them, especially around this idea of like I know God's forgiven me, but I'm having a hard time forgiving myself. And that just seems to be a theme, not only just in the men I've talked to, but in just my own life and in the life of a lot of dudes out there. We just wrestling with our past, right? Now you combine that with a few weeks ago I was teaching on the weekend. I was really trying to lean into the next gen, middle school, high school, college students, because they're just being bombarded with all these messages around identity and gender and sexuality and am I gay, am I straight, am I something else, and all that. And so I'm preaching through my talk, and then I just went off script, and I said some stuff that I said in more private conversations, and I've said in retreat settings, especially men's retreats, and I've alluded to it from the stage at church before, but I've never really come out and said out loud to that wide of an audience. When I was a kid, I got hurt, I got abused, and the truth is, 1 in 3 women have been sexually abused in some way, and 1 in 4 men, which nobody talks about that at all, but 1 in 4 of us have in some way had somebody that we trust take advantage of us. And that happened to me several times when I was a kid. A lot by one person, and then off and on all the way up through high school. I just had a memory even a few months ago going, oh, I forgot about that one. Now here's the thing about that, okay? And it's all tied together with self-forgiveness is a lot a lot of times, like I'll give you an example. So I'm on a duck hunt a couple years ago, and a guy with me named Dave, he looks at me and goes, because he knew my story, and he goes, "Hey Jim, is that the worst thing that's ever happened to you?" And I thought to myself, well, I guess it's a really really bad thing, you know. But at the time, I didn't hate it. Uh, Meaning this is I didn't think anything about it. I just thought this is life. This is what life looks like. This is my role. I guess this is what you do, all right? Because the people that did that to me were older than me, and I thought, okay, well, I guess this is how you play army, you know, or this is how you get along even in high school at your job, you know. And so then now you put some history, but there's something within me that goes, this isn't right, right? But then you look back and go, then what does that make me, right? Why didn't you fight? Why didn't you push back? Why didn't you say stop? Why didn't you go tell somebody? And it's like, it never even occurred to me. So then the tapes start playing in your head. Then what's that mean about you? Right? So it wasn't until 2014, which would be like 8 years ago, that I went on a retreat and actually, like looked at that, like confronted that. And there's a certain process that you go through, at least in the retreat I was on, where you actually are able to kind of emotionally travel back and have a conversation with yourself as a kid, and you talk about that. And wow. And I remember having a conversation with me in elementary school. All right, this is all, it's call it a magic carpet, you can call it whatever. I know it's an emotional and a psychological exercise. It's a spiritual journey you go on. But I remember looking at myself, and this is where the phrase came to my kind of I started using a lot of that. It's like I let myself off the mat. Yeah, I looked at like what I did back in high school and grade school and all that, and I just told myself, it's like, dude, you didn't know, or if you did know, you didn't know what to do. You did the best you could. And I was holding that kid. I think I was 51 at the time. I was holding a kid who's 8, 9, 15, 16 years old. I was holding that kid to a 51-year-old level of accountability, and that's not fair. And I had to look at look at myself and go like, you did the best you could. If you had the words now, if you had the knowledge now, if you had the wisdom now, if you had the truth now, you would have fought. You would have run. You would have told. You would have fought back, something like that. But you didn't. And I had to forgive myself because a lot of like very self-defining things came out of that. That other people did stuff to me, and that's their fault. But then I processed it incorrectly, and then I made choices and decisions based on a definition that kind of got thrown on me, and I had to forgive myself, right? And I'm looking at a lot of us. We look back like before we had Christ in our life, or before we knew truth, before we knew who we were, before we had kind of had a plan for our life, we just kind of went with whatever came at us. And if we got a do-over, we would make very, very different decisions, but we didn't. We don't have a do-over. And so sometimes we have to look back and go like, okay, I didn't know what I was doing. Or if I did know what I was doing, I didn't know what to do instead. I wasn't strong enough. I was scared. All this. It doesn't make it right, so there are no excuses, but there are reasons why we've done. But either way, you have to look back at that and go like, there is no magic button. There is no rewind that says, can I push that and say that never happened? Mm-mm. You don't get that back. That'd be great, wouldn't it? But you don't. So what you do is you look back and go like, would I do that again now? And the answer is no, right? So you have to look back and go, I'm not the same person I am. I'm not the same person now that I was back then. So that person, he's gone, right? Or that person, that was part of the journey to get here, right? And that's the other thing I had to look at is that I don't think that everything that's happened in my life is God's will for my life. I think I've looked at God and said, "Shut up and stay out of my life." And then I went my own journey, and then I screwed it up, and then He came and got me and rescued me. You can say, "Well, was that all God's plan for your life?" No, God's plan for my life was I stayed with Him the whole way. I do think this. I think that I'll give you an example. So before I went on that retreat, they give you all this homework, right? And one of those homework is you kind of look back over your life. And I had this aha moment as I started thinking about the abuse and thinking about all the mistakes in my life and my journey over the last, the decades between that and today. And I thought to myself, that made me who I am today. Like even the bad parts of our life, our biggest regrets and mistakes, they've helped form us into who we are today. God has used all of that, right? And He promises, I'll use even the bad stuff. I'll use your sin, and I'll redeem it, and I'll build you into something even better than that. And so I remember looking back, and you can never give this advice to anybody who's in the middle of a crisis. Please don't. They'll punch you in the face, and they ought to. I look back over my life and I thought, if the only way to get here today, to have Robin as my wife and have Allie and Jordan as my kids and have my 6 grandkids and to be the leader of Flatirons, to sit on this porch and have this conversation with you. If the only way to get here is to have what happened to me happen to me, would I sign up again? And the answer is, if that's the only way to get here, yeah, I would. I would, because the thing that qualifies me to sit here and say you can move on, you can forgive yourself, you can heal, and God can use even the worst, crappiest moments of your past to build something beautiful in your life. The only way I can get there is to have it lived it. So if the only way for me to have this conversation with you is to live through it. Now, if there's another way to get here that doesn't involve, getting abused and hurt and then living with decades of shame and wondering like what does that make me and all that, then I would choose that. But if the only way is to get here. And so I think that sometimes when we talk about self-forgiveness, I think what we have to do is go, all right, I keep beating myself up for my past that I can't undo. So that's a vicious cycle. It goes nowhere. I'd go so far as to say this, and there's bees coming at me left and right. So if I run off the stage screaming, I'm sorry. Um, Sometimes when we say I can't forgive myself, what we're saying is This is too big for even God. What I've done is it's even too big for Jesus to take care of. And that just can't be true, right? We actually are kind of making an idol out of our sin, going, God can run the universe and God can do all this, but my stuff is too much for him. And that's not true. Um, some of the stuff that we've done in our life, it's going to take the death of Jesus on a cross to make it right. But he did it. He did it for us. So I want you to not confuse, hey, I still have regrets over my past. Well, I do too. I still have, I wish it hadn't happened. Yeah, me too. I wish I got a do-over and could do it differently. Yeah, I do too. None of that's on the table. Don't confuse that with the forgiveness and the healing process it's going to take the rest of your life, right? So just because you wrestle with it and have regrets over your past, that's not the same as I haven't forgiven myself and I don't love myself. It's actually it, don't stop there. Take that over, going, I'm still beating myself for my past. Take that over and go, so Jesus, I need you to get involved in this. Remind me who you are. Remind me who I am to you. And remind me that while that wasn't a part of your plan for my life, you're still part of my life today. And, and the shame seems to lift off of that. Here's one more part of that. It's going to almost sound contradictory. Um, I think that sometimes our problem is not self forgiveness, it is we want to move on too quickly. All right, like can I just put this behind me and forget it ever happened? That would be nice. It's not reality. Um, I have a friend who a couple years ago had an affair, um, and and it ended in divorce. She moved on pretty quick, uh, and he hasn't, but he wants to. And especially since she's moving on really, really quickly, he wants to, like, well, then I just want to get back in the saddle. And he's not ready. He's hurting. He's angry. So a lot of stuff he hasn't dealt with. I think a lot of times we want to move on too quickly. Can I just put this behind me? When I was on sabbatical and and just I'm in meltdown mode, my solution was just let me go back to work. I'll do it different next time. Let's just move on and can we stop talking about this? And my counselor looked at me and went, "You can't rush this, man." I think the mantra I had during my whole sabbatical was slow is fast. If you will slow down, you'll actually accomplish so much more. And here's what he meant by that. My mantra in the past has been fast is fast. Let's just get a lot of shit done really, really, really quickly. Let's go fast. Let's turn corners really quickly. Let's shift directions, all right? Which works great until you look in the rearview mirror and there are bodies everywhere. And then you have to stop, not slow down, you have to stop and go back and start picking up the pieces. And then when you're ready to go on, it actually took more time than if you had just slowed to slow down, all right? And so when it comes to healing and self-forgiveness, you can't rush it. You also can't control other people's responses. You can't make people forgive quicker than they're really to forgive. You can't make people heal faster than they're willing to or able to heal. And a lot of times that gets confusing, all right? So we're either too slow in forgiving ourselves, and that's a problem, or we try to act like everything is fine and we move on too quickly. And it's somewhere in the middle. It's somewhere in the middle. One is we have to realize is that we've all done a lot of stuff in our life that it wasn't God's will for our life, and if we got to do over, we wouldn't do it again. But it happened. So what do we do now? And the answer is we look at it, we accept God's grace, we learn from it, and then we begin to heal and move on. Not too quickly. Not too quickly. On the really, really important stuff of life, the reason it hurts so bad is because it's important, right? It's important. And the most important things, I'm looking around at some of these trees that are around me right now. You can't rush it. These things have taken years and years and years and years and years to grow. Weeds grow like that. Flowers that are here today and tomorrow thrown into the fire, to quote Jesus, they come up, they will. But a tree, a pine tree, an oak tree, it takes a long time because it's important. Becoming the man that God wants you to be, especially when you've been dinged a few times and maybe somebody took a chainsaw to you, maybe the wind's blowing a little bit, you've lost some limbs and branches, and you got to recover for a while. That's going to take a while. Forgiveness, self forgiveness is a journey. Forgiveness from God, right away. It's grace. He pours it out as quickly as you can ask for it. Healing, on the other hand, that's going to take a while, but it is possible. Um, Jesus has forgiven you. You got to forgive yourself. You got to learn from it. You got to heal along the way. You got to get some other people around your life and remind you what's true, especially when you- you're you're feeling like, I think I'm going to do it again. You got to get some really strong men around you. That's what this whole herd thing is about, right? Is that we're not supposed to do this by ourselves. We need to get some people around us that says remind us what's true. I am forgiven. That's not who I am. What happened to me does not define me. What Jesus says is true about me is who I am. And from that point, together, we can move on.